Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. I have not been posting a ton on build projects or anything, really because I just haven't been home. I've been on work travel a ton the last couple of months. As you guys know, we went to the Scale Masters back in October. And so I really haven't, I was going super hard on everything right up until that event. So I kind of took a little break. We did get this puppy put together and flying after that, but that was the last big thing I got done. Anyways, if you know, we had some issues with the Bearcat, and if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that this airplane is essentially cursed. So it has been nothing but trouble from day one, with some very short periods of time where nothing went wrong. So if you follow my friend John Cohn's channel, just Wing It is the name. He has a couple of really great videos of this airplane at Scale Masters, with probably some of the best flying I've done with it since I've had it. And a lot of you guys subscribe to his channel, I know. But if you don't, you should check him out. So anyways, there's a couple of really great videos of this thing flying. And if you've seen the videos, you know that we had a belly landing and then a gear collapse. So you're supposed to compete in 5 or 6 rounds, and I only got 3. The first flight actually was fine. The second flight, the gear wouldn't come down. And the reason the gear wouldn't come down was because one of the airlines blew off of a retract unit, and I lost all the air in the middle of the flight. And since I don't have a failsafe for the gear lowering, well, I just didn't have landing gear. So I landed on its belly, and it was not a gentle landing by any means. Typically, I like to really grease them in on something like that. But with this 4-blade prop on this thing, when you, especially with the flaps out, when you cut the power, it's like throwing a parachute out the back. So anyways, what happened was the airplane just essentially dropped out of the sky the second I hit the kill switch from a couple of feet up, and this thing weighs 40 pounds, so it wasn't exactly going slow. But all that being said, the damage, quite frankly, was incredibly minimal. You see quite a bit of Bondo here, but really it was just, it mostly rubbed right here. This is kind of the lowest spot. There's a couple scratches up in here on the belly pan, and then some scratches down here. It looks really bad, but really it was just, I'm filling in the scratches with the Bondo, and then this spot right here got kind of messed up, so filling that in. But the cowling was fine. The prop kind of saved the cowling, because with the 2 lower blades down, even though they broke, they still kind of held the nose off the ground. So it hit the flaps in a couple of spots because I was at full flap when I landed. Anyways, there's some visible damage, no structural damage really, just all cosmetics. So I've already got the belly pan all sanded up and filled in and ready for paint. The wingtip was really messed up from the gear collapse. So the gear collapsed because, let me show you guys. And I'll get the wing over here on the stand so you guys have a better idea what I'm talking about. But essentially, this is the downlock mechanism that locks the lower portion of the strut in place and keeps it from just bending. As you can see here, the end of it is broken off. Now this happened a long time ago, and my workaround for that was I wrapped the end of this in carbon tow, which that worked, but it sort of worked. It worked as long as the airplane didn't ground loop or side load the gear bad enough to where it was almost going to ground loop. And then because it pulls on this, when you side load the gear, it was just tearing the carbon tow. So the last time I fixed it, I put a ton of carbon tow on it, and I prepped it really well. And it still broke at the Scale Masters when it side loaded the gear. So essentially, like I said, I'll put this thing on the stand. But essentially, this is the downlock right here. And so you see, it's got that little pin right there that goes through it. And when this comes down, when this is up, the gear can fold right there, right? So when this is down, it can't go. There's a little bit of slop in this one, but so this is the one that kept failing. And so I made a new one. It's not steel, it's aluminum, but I did make it bigger to where it should have more It probably won't be stronger than steel, but it'll be at least as strong as the original one. It's much taller. The original one had like no meat around the edges of the holes. So I don't know why they made it so small, but I was able to make this one a little bit bigger. So yeah, so this is the down lock mechanism. And once the airplane's painted up and doesn't look so bad underneath, I'll get this thing and I'll show you guys how the gear cycle, because we had some guys asking how it works. So anyways, when this failed, the side load on the lower portion of the gear here is pulling out on this, and it ripped the carbon toe. There's a pivot point right here. There's a pin that goes through here, and that's what holds this down lock in place. So that tore, and then that puts all the load on this, and then that just bends and snaps. So that snapped, that broke. So now I've made a new down lock, and I've fixed that. So now it's really just down to me fixing the paint. So all the body work's done, like I said, and I'll get this thing flipped over and show you guys in a little bit. But for right now, I'm just doing body work. And yeah, so I got a bunch of projects to do. I got this Top RC Corsair right here that it's not going to stay in this paint scheme. I bought this one because it was on sale and they didn't have any other ones in stock. And even if I would have gotten one of the other ones, I would have repainted that one as well because, well, their paint jobs aren't horrible, but they're not that great. So, although the markings on this one are fairly accurate, aside from the star and bar, but anyways, that's besides the point. This paint job is for a much later version of the Corsair anyways, and even if this was the proper Corsair for this paint job, I'm just not a big fan of it. So I know a lot of people like that one, but I just like blue, dark blue Corsairs. I don't know what there is about it. And then I also have this Robart P47. So both of these are full composite Warbirds. Both of them are 93-inch wingspans. A little bit bigger than the Bearcat, although not a whole lot really in girth, if that's the way you want to say it. The wingspan of the Bearcat's 87, but it's a big fat wing. So anyways, so I'm trying to get all this stuff fixed that has been broken for a while before I start this new stuff. Although I did get the rest of the goodies for the Corsair. I got the landing gear for it. These things were not cheap. Actually kind of overpriced in my opinion, but they seem decent. But what I am doing is, you see I got these wheels here. I had put on a set of these Robart wheels and tires that I had gotten actually with the P47 that I bought. And the original wheels and tires on the Bearcat were scaled for a Bearcat, but the tires kept pulling off the wheels, and they didn't even match. They were two separate manufacturers. And so I put those Robarts on, and one of the things I needed to do with this airplane, because of the huge motor and prop, was figure out a way to get a bunch of friction in the wheels to help it keep it from rolling at idle, because I don't have brakes on it. So when I set up those Robarts, that's what I did. And unfortunately, I think one of the reasons why I kept ground looping was the wheel on the right side stayed kind of tight, and the one on the left side started to loosen up a little bit. So there was already some yawing motion being caused by the wheels not having equal friction. So these are the wheels that came for the Corsair landing gear, and these are the tires. And honestly, these are more scale for a Bearcat than they are for a Corsair. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've already set it all up. I'm going to put these in the Bearcat and these in the Corsair. So one of the things the Bearcat wheel and tire is that it's a very low profile tire, and it's kind of skinny. So these have a little more scale look to them. These were never really scale for a Bearcat. I just had them, and they were better quality and much lighter than the original wheels and tires. So that's why I use them. These are even lighter. These are like 1.5 ounces lighter than these Robart ones. So anyways, I took the wheels apart so I could paint the wheels blue. Unfortunately, they Loctite the piss out of these things at the factory, and I broke almost half of the screws trying to get them out. So that was fun. So I got to find new screws now. But anyways, yeah, I'm just doing body work on this dang thing. Oh, and so I fixed a few other airplanes too. So it's St. George. The X1 on the It always happens this way. Last flight of the day, or the whole event, after I landed, I went to go turn around and got off in the dirt, and it ripped the nose gear door off because it's so low to the ground. It got caught by a rock or something. Just ripped it right out. So I fixed that and I body worked it and repainted it, and now it looks really sweet. So that's all done. And the F-16, I was flying it at St. George, and I was just flying around for like 2 or 3 minutes in high alpha, just having a good time. And I don't know if the ESC overtempt and it cut power or what, but I was down at about 4 or 5 feet in high alpha, and the motor just quit. And it wasn't the battery, because the battery had plenty of power left in it. So I'm thinking it was a temperature issue with the ESC, and it just shut the power off because I was flying around slow and there just wasn't enough air moving over the ESC or something. So anyways, the belly it wasn't bad. It landed in the turf that's next to the runway, and it broke the ventral fins off, which that's kind of standard issue for an F-16 belly landing. But I just scraped up the nose and underneath the chin a little bit, so I'm just kind of spackling and getting ready to put some paint on that. And on the YF-17, I had to change the wing harness because I used one of the ones that was intended for this thing, so I had to put a different one in there because I pulled it out to put in here so I could have matching wing harnesses. And so anyways, this thing's been sitting here with wires undone and everything, all that figured out, so that's all good to go. Let's see. I am making, this is a new canopy plug for the Freewing Panther. So the stock Freewing Panther canopy is ridiculous. So I'm making a new one, but that's a different story for a different day. Let's get this thing all painted up and back to her former glory. She's filthy right now, by the way, so don't think she looks this bad. She's just dusty. But yeah, let me get back to work, and we'll show you guys the progress when I got something else to show. All right, so I got everything touched up. I had a bunch of little touch-ups to do. I did with a brush, but anyways, got the wheels painted, painted the back sides so you don't see silver inside the wheel. This turned out pretty good. Wingtips fixed up. That was pretty bad. Here's the belly. I just repainted this whole section here. Touched up all the little nicks and dings and stuff in the landing gear that I had fixed or ground. You really can't see underneath the belly on this thing right now, obviously. And it's nothing you're even going to notice when the plane is all put together at the field. But the bottom turned out pretty good, much like the belly pan here. It's poor lighting, obviously, but... and the airplane's still dusty and dirty, but anyways, paint turned out good. So tomorrow we'll reassemble the landing gear. I'll give you guys a demonstration of how this landing gear works. And I do need to re-glue. It broke the servo loose when it hit the ground when the gear collapsed, so I gotta fix that. It needs a receiver. I got one on order, Spectrum Synapse receiver. I took it out to put it in the Hanger 9 MB339, so just waiting on that. I got my new prop that I need to drill and paint, and yeah, F-16 just needs to be sanded, a little bit of polyurethane, and then just redo the paint on the bottom, so no big deal there. Let's see, I got everything else painted and touched up, so yeah, that's just about it for the Bearcat. But tomorrow we'll get some more footage with it all cleaned up and put back together. Alright guys, so next morning, and you guys can see the repairs in the belly here. Nothing's perfect, but this is a flyer, or it's supposed to be a flyer. So anyways, I'd had some viewers ask me to show how these gear work, and so this is mimicked after the full scale. Pretty close to scale as far as the way it actuates and things of that nature. I mean, not this portion of it, but the way the strut moves is the way the real one does. So before I button it up, I figured I'd show you guys how it works, because once you put the doors on, it makes it a lot harder to see. So the reason why the Bearcat has folding landing gear is because the prop is gigantic, and unlike the Corsair, which has a bent wing to shorten the struts, they went with a different approach. And to keep the landing gear at a relatively decent location instead of having it hinged way out here, which increases the load on the spar and everything else when you have landings on a carrier. So to keep it a more normal distance and to keep from creating too much load forces out here as the airplane hits the ground, they moved it in a little bit. And in order to do that, to keep from, because they needed this room in the center for other things, so they couldn't just put it super close either. So this is what they came up with. It's a folding strut. Let me get my arm out of the way so you guys can see it. So when it comes up, it does this. Now the thing that keeps breaking, or that has broken a bunch of times in the past after I fixed it, is this down lock right here. So once you can see right here, once this trunnion comes up and dead ends right here, there's a little air button valve thing, and basically once it comes straight, this touches this button, and then that pushes the air into the cylinder, which closes the lock. And now the strut won't go anywhere. So, and then when you go to put the gear down, the air comes from the other side, automatically lowers the lock, and then starts the process to drop it in. So simple yet not. So but what's cool is that there's no like secondary valve or anything like on a servo to control the down locks. It's all part of the mechanism itself. Once it hits this stage, it pushes the air in here, and then it folds it up. So yeah, pretty cool way to do it. And see, I got the new wheels on. And what's nice about these is that I can actually tighten the screw on the end to make them looser or tighter. And they've got a bunch of Loctite on there, so the screw won't just come out. But anyways, those are all set up now. And actually, I definitely like the look of these much more than the Robarts. Just because Bearcats, and this is a common problem with Bearcat models, Bearcats have pretty small and skinny tires. They're not big. The whole idea behind the Bearcat was to keep it lightweight, so they don't have some gigantic, overdone tires. They never intended to fly these off of dirt strips or anything like that, like the Corsair or the Hellcat would have done. So the tires in the Bearcat are much smaller than a Corsair or a P47 or even a P51, because it was never intended to fly off of unimproved strips, dirt strips, or anything like that, just carriers and asphalt runways or concrete runways. So anyways, these are all set up now. Everything's good to go there. I fixed the air cylinder, which had popped loose, and actually that was one of the reasons why the gear collapsed at the Scale Masters, was because I had no air pressure, because the top part of this air cylinder popped off. Now, whether that was from air loads of this thing pulling on it or too much air pressure, I'm not really sure. I've had that happen before on the other one, and I've already fixed that one, so I guess I was due for this failure. So this thing has got a great way of letting me know when something fails, and it seems like every time it does that, I lose $200 in props. So not that that's funny, because it's certainly not. But anyways, then I got the servo mounts re-glued here. So essentially, you just need to put the doors back on it and clean it up and set up my new prop, drill it out, do the paint details, and then that's all done. So the F-16's finished. Got that done this morning, so that's looking good. Just got to put the decals back on the nose, but other than that, bottom turned out pretty nice. And after everything's said and done, it's just a foamy. So anywho, let me get this thing all wrapped up, and maybe I'll get it cleaned up and get a quick clip of it sitting all put together. Alright guys, so everything's fixed. Everything's back together. I ended up fixing a hinge on the gear door. I got the new prop all set up. Another thing I had to fix was the hinges on my little hatch. Had to fix that. Just bunch of little stuff. So anyways, it's all ready to go, just needs a receiver. So I'm just once that shows up next week, hopefully we can get this thing test flown, and we'll get it put back together and do a full systems check here at home first, obviously. But anyways, F-16's all finished up. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the repairs went, and hopefully this thing doesn't suck next time I go to fly it. Anyways, I hope you guys liked it, and we'll see you in the next one.